Good afternoon, St. George. This is Michael Harding with On the Arts. Now, I've got two very special guests in the studio today, two that I've actually just started to get to know. I've watched their work in various capacities over the last, shall we say, on about a year, I would say. And this will be an opportunity for me to get to know them, to have them be able to chat and let St. George get to know them as well. Now, just to reiterate what On the Arts is. On the Arts is my attempt to let people know in southern Utah that there are all these little secrets that we don't want to be secrets anymore. We want people to know that there are artistic offerings around here. Not only theater, which is very close to my heart, and also I'm assuming, to the hearts of my two guests in the studio today, but also the visual arts, ceramics and painting, as well as music and singing. And we're also talking to some guests that are writers, playwrights, and all sorts of literature, poets. So we want to cover all of the arts and let you know that there are a lot of opportunities here not only to experience the arts, but also to participate in the arts as well. Now, I have to say that this is going to be a very special episode of On the Arts. And I have to tell you, in trying to think of how I was going to introduce this show, I was a little nervous for that. Now, this might be something that Cade, one of our guests here in the studio, you're 10 years old, Cade?
Yes.
Okay. You may not be aware of this. This is something that actually predates Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, any of these streaming shows where you could binge watch the entire thing. When I was growing up, and I'm not going to make any comments, Karen, over there.
I'm sure we relate.
I'm thinking, I'm not sure. But when I was growing up, there would be one episode a week on television of your favorite shows, and you would have to wait a week before the next episode came on. And sometimes the writers were, and this was for comedies and dramas, and sometimes the writers were especially cruel. What they would do is you'd get near the end of the hour or near the end of the half hour and you'd think, oh, they better wrap this up quickly. And then those dreaded 3 words would pop up at the bottom of the screen, "To be continued." And it was torture because you had to wait for the very next week. You had to wait 7 days before you could find out what happened. Well, another thing that was very common with these shows, especially the comedies, the sitcoms that I was watching, were advertisements that would say, this is a very special episode of, and especially if you had a goofy comedy like Mad About You or Cheers or Friends or Seinfeld, these shows that were, I'm sure you're aware of, but certainly the shows that were brand new when I was growing up and such. Whenever they said a very special episode, that meant someone was going to die or they were going to deal with some major life crisis. And when you look at the shows we have today, streaming or on Hulu or on HBO, Game of Thrones, a very special episode would be one where someone doesn't die. When you look at these stories, Walking Dead, my gosh, I was just waiting for one episode where someone of the main characters didn't die. So anyways, I was a little bit hesitant to say this is a very special episode of On the Arts. I'll tell you, the reason it is special is because this is going to be our last episode of the spring 2018 season. So we're practically done with our first season of On the Arts. We are going to be taking a break over the summer. I'm very proud to say that's because I won't be here. I've actually got a contract that I'm going to be working up north as well as a few other projects. And basically just won't be here to do the recording of the show. But I want to let you know that we are in talks with the owner and the director of the station, and the response to this show has been tremendous. I've been actually overwhelmed with the response of our listenership. I'm fairly certain that we reached double digits in our listenership. I think that was about 2 weeks ago. We're hoping to go for maybe in the 20s or 30s next time we do the show. And also, in having guests on in southern Utah, some southern Utah artists, we started to have people interested in being on the show and coming to us. And even looking over the list, and I am going to, at the end of this particular very special episode, I'm going to be giving some very special thanks to the guests we've had on thus far. And as I was writing down the list of guests we've had in the relatively short amount of time that we've been on the air, I'm actually pretty amazed, and to know that we have just scratched the surface of the number of true artists that are down here in southern Utah, it just makes me incredibly excited. Now, as I take some water, I'm sure that some radio hosts, they have a cough button or something like that. I'm not quite to that advanced state. But I always try to open the show with a little bit of a monologue. As I mentioned to my guests, and most of my guests, I am an actor. I like the sound of my own voice. I start with a little monologue that I think relates to whom I'm going to be speaking. Now, I wanted to share with you an experience I had when I was just out of undergrad. I became a journeyman actor at the Warehouse Theater in South Carolina, which meant that I was a company member, and I was there year-round, and I made $50 a month. I kid you not. I'm still not sure how I survived on that, but we did somehow. And myself and my friends, we got to be the minor roles in the shows that were in the season. And that's how we learned. We watched the leads, and eventually we actually grew up into these roles ourselves. But in order to live, we all had to band together, and we created this little commune in South Carolina, this housing development, and I hesitate to say housing development. It was basically just a place where there were a lot of houses, and we would live there all together. Well, there was one time where I was home alone, and that was the best time for an actor because you could do your rehearsing, you could sing, you could speak, whatever you needed to do, and not feel self-conscious at all. And I was fortunate to have been cast in a show called Closer Than Ever. It was a musical review by Richard Maltby and Shire. Now, you may know Maltby and Shire. You may know the name Maltby. There's a little teeny show that did all right called Miss Saigon a few years ago. And he was actually the American, not book writer, but the lyrics writer. He translated from Bobille and Schomburg. And he and Shire had put together this musical review, and they did a few of those. There's one called Baby, which is about how do couples deal with having a baby, having a new addition to their family. But Closer Than Ever is about 4 characters, man 1, man 2, woman 1, woman 2. And I was very fortunate to be man 2 in this. So it was a small ensemble. We all had our songs that we got to play. It played on Broadway for a while, so this was a show in our minds that was incredibly legit, and we got to introduce it to Greenville, South Carolina. And I was in my living room alone, singing, belting at the top of my voice, trying to figure out how to sing these songs. And there came this angry knock on the door, or a knock that I thought was angry. And I remind you, this is in Greenville, South Carolina, not where most people would go for a Broadway show or really any innovation of the arts at that time particularly. And there was this heavy knock on the door, so I went and I answered it, and I was a little embarrassed, thinking, oh my gosh, I was singing too loud, I was bugging my neighbors. And there was a guy there, never seen him before, and he just said, "Why were you singing that?" And I remember being a little put off, thinking, well, because I'm rehearsing, but I explained that I was an actor with the local theater, and it was a song from a show that I was currently in. And he started smiling, and he said, "It's Closer Than Ever, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Do you know it?" And he said, "Yeah, I stage managed the original production in New York." And I thought, what an incredibly strange occurrence in the middle of this random housing development in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, the land of the cow, if I may say that. I mean, holy cow, no pun intended on that. I mean, this was not where I'd go for the arts necessarily. And here was this guy who had worked on the production that I was working on, the original in New York. So it only emphasized to me how small this world really is, especially in the world of the arts. Now, the reason I bring this up, now, I'm not saying that you guys have come to a cow town. No, you've come to southern Utah, and we'll get to know you a little bit more. But I've actually been amazed looking at your resumes, hearing what I have about you, your experiences that you've had, and that's what I'm very much looking forward to finding out. Now, we're going to start with you, Cade. You ready?
Sure.
Okay, fantastic. A man of few words, that Cade. Cade, it says you're 10 years old, but you've already had a career that I think a lot of people would envy. Let's see, tell us what you're doing right now.
I am in Matilda at Tuacahn.
Fantastic. And what are you playing?
I am Bruce's understudy.
Oh, fantastic. And who is Bruce in this?
He is one of the... He is one of the school kids, and yeah, he has a pretty awesome part.
Fantastic.
Not gonna lie.
Gotcha. And you do a lot of singing in this role?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And let's see, you're singing for this. You've done several other musicals as well, and several of them at Tuacahn, am I correct?
Yes.
Gotcha. What are some of the other shows you've done?
Well, I have done Shrek at Tuacahn. I have done Newsies at Tucon, I was the understudy for Les. And Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, I was also in that at Tucon. And The Wizard of Oz at Tucon.
Fantastic. So you got some pretty big name shows that you've done. And I'm assuming you like working at Tuacahn?
Oh, of course.
Fantastic. You're a very politic young actor, I want to tell you that. No, Tuacahn, I've never worked there personally. Most of my work has been done up north and actually in other places around the country. But I've never worked there myself. And it does seem like there are a lot of people who have done shows there that they really enjoy it and they want to come back. Do you have a favorite show that you've done there?
Favorite show? Honestly, it's probably going to be Matilda because I love how many like kids there are, and it's just really good.
I want you to know you're going to have a fantastic career as an actor because your favorite show is what you're doing right now. And I've also heard that the happiest actor is the one who's on his way to his next job, as opposed to once they get to the job, then they're stressing about what's going to come next and such. So, Cade, looks like you're in a wonderful place for this. Now, that's our introduction to Cade. I also want to talk to our other guest. This is Karen Edwards. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Now, you're also working at Tuacahn right now. What is your function there?
I'm the company manager at Tuacahn, so I handle the housing, travel arrangements for the actors that we bring in, and for the crew that we have that cover our Broadway season. So we have 3 shows in rep, and then we'll do an indoor show as well. So those 4 shows from April through the end of October. Then we'll do a Christmas show, and then we go back out and we audition. We spend 3 months on the audition tour, and we start all over again. I handle everything from, like, if they lock their keys in their car or they have an internet problem.
Actors are never flighty.
No, never.
Right.
I really like to think of myself kind of as like team mom. So somebody that they can call when they have a problem and they don't know who else to call. So if they misread the rehearsal schedule and they need a ride, I'm the first on like speed dial.
Who are you going to call? Karen Edwards. Yep. Now, I'll tell you, company managing is one of those roles that I think a lot of people aren't aware of when they go to the theater. I think it's a pretty safe thing to say that for every actor you see on stage, there are 6 or 7 backstage or in the main offices that are making that show happen. There's a lot of logistics that go into making it happen, and one of them is getting the actors here, for Pete's sakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned that's a year-round process, isn't it?
It is for us. Our season, our outdoor season is 28 weeks long, so almost 7 months. And then we have our indoor Christmas show, which runs all the way up through Christmas. And then we start our audition tour in January, and we don't finish until March. And then we cast it, and we bring them in.
Gotcha.
We do concerts in the interim.
Now, anybody who is in southern Utah and says there's never any theater going on has just been proven wrong.
Always.
With that.
I mean, sometimes the shows aren't up yet, but we're always in the process, in some stage of the process. And, as soon as we've got the rights to one show and we've, got the set design and like everything started, they start looking for what might be a good fit for the next year.
Gotcha. And I want to let you know that I have very little experience being a company manager. I'm an actor. I've made that very clear to people. I have been kicked out of more scene shops than I care to mention. I'm not good with my hands or tools or things of that sort. Put me in a costume shop and took me 3 hours to put on 3 buttons one time. That was the extension or the extensive costume career I've had in my life. Now, as a company manager, I only did it once, and this was for a tour, a small tour. It was for the educational tour of the Utah Shakespeare Company. And I thought to myself, how bad could this be? I'm just going to basically make sure the actors get where they need to be. I'm on the road with them. I'll call the hotels, and it's all just fine. Well, of course, there are all sorts of logistical joys, and, of course, the occasional thing that comes up. My favorite experience, or I should say the experience that stands out more than anything else, was at 2 a.m. I got a call from one of the actors, and they were freaking out and just said, "This room will not do." And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, they've got a mouse or something like that. And I said, okay, so what's going on? And the actress was very clear about, there is a strange spiritual presence. I will not let you alone until I get a new room. Well, that hotel was booked, and I'll tell you, it was a wonderful trial by fire trying to figure out what to do with this actress. I'm happy to say I did get her into another hotel room down the street at about 5 in the morning, and our call was 6:30 in the morning, so I don't think she got to enjoy it at all. But have you had experiences like that?
Definitely. I mean, everybody comes with their own personality, and we're usually housing people together. So you have personalities that you're trying to mesh, and you will have never met the people before. So you try to guess based on, like maybe age or what might be a good fit, who you think might be quieter, who might be louder. But I mean, it's just a guessing game. You just never know. So personalities have to mesh, and then, people's like just internal rhythms. Like, I mean, they're all on the same rehearsal schedule, more or less. But then, some people are like night owls and some people are morning people. And sometimes the two of those don't mix well. And then in terms of housing, it's kind of a logistical nightmare here as well. A lot of times the furnished housing that we're looking for is spread out all over the place. So in terms of what it might look like or how it is to get to the theater, or, just to make sure that their dates correspond with what the owner's dates will work out. It's a puzzle.
Well, and something I think a lot of people don't understand about bringing the actors in, a lot of the actors, it can be, you just put them anywhere. But when you start getting into actors who are part of the union, the Actors Equity Association, there are some rules you have to follow with housing and such, aren't there?
Yeah, there are very specific rules as to what furnishings even have to be in the apartment, and all of that. And we try to keep them all together if we can, just because we don't provide vehicles. We try to encourage them to bring vehicles if they have access to them, but we have 60 cast members this season so far, and maybe a third to a half of them have their own vehicles, but we shuttle them back and forth, and so they're kind of stranded too. They're at their mercy. We provide shopping trips and excursions, and they are busy because they're rehearsing all day, but you get a little stir crazy too, and they need to get out. Luckily, we're right across the street from the urgent care, because that's
that's a good thing
right?
to have. Well, as a young actor, before I was equity myself, my inspiration to become an equity actor, I wish I could say it were something that were very honorable. No, my inspiration was an older equity actor came into rehearsal just in a tizzy, and you hear about these stereotypical large personalitied actors and these divas and such. This was actually a really nice guy, but I was amazed because he came in and went right to the company manager saying, "I don't have a colander. I don't rehearse until I get a colander." And I thought, wow, that's power that you have right there. And I don't know if power is the proper word, but that's influence,
right,
I guess.
there you go.
Right. No, Kate.
He's been a big pasta eater.
Absolutely.
Colanders are important.
He played an operatic character, so he was of the not small sort. Let's put it that way. And if he's listening, he doesn't know I'm talking about him. I didn't use a name. All right, Kate. So you are working out there. Your mom mentioned that. I hope it's okay that I put that relationship out there. Your mom mentioned that you're rehearsing quite a bit, and this goes for understudies and main characters. I know that there's a misconception out there among a lot of the people that I work with that an understudy, all they do is they get their script and they go home and then they get a call occasionally and come in. There is a lot of work to being an understudy, isn't there?
Yes.
Gotcha. And how do you prepare to be an understudy?
Well, you kind of have to, since you can't be on stage like right behind them, you kind of have to like imagine yourself like being in their shoes, kind of.
Got it. So you watch them work and you imagine what it would be like to do what they're doing?
Yes.
Got it. And do you get to work with the choreographers to learn the dancing and such?
Yes.
Gotcha. Are you a big dancer? Do you like that part of it?
Yeah, it's super fun.
Gotcha. You are going to be a fantastic actor because you say that. Most of the actors I know, they have one thing that they don't really care for, and it's either the singing or the dancing. Personally, if you are watching the live feed on Facebook, you can see that I am an Adonis, an athletic Adonis. That's one of the reasons I really like radio. You can say whatever you want on that. Oh, fantastic. But I will say, whenever I get cast in a musical, I think, oh, man, I got to learn the dancing. And then as an understudy, I think, oh, man, I got to learn the dancing, but I don't even get the joy of presenting it to the audience. Let me ask you, are you guaranteed a performance, or are you just on call?
No, I'm just on call. Well, yeah.
Just in case something happens.
Right. And that's an important thing to have, especially when you have such a long run, 28 weeks you were saying. I mean, the odds, I don't mean to jinx anybody, but the odds that something is going to happen are pretty good. That doesn't mean that it's going to. I've always been a little nervous about the phrase break a leg in theater. And again, just a story. When I was in undergraduate, I was playing a role called Sky Masterson in a play called Guys and Dolls. And if you know that musical, kind of a major role there, and there is some dancing involved. Luckily, he is a lead, so people can dance around him, and it looks pretty good. I had a friend say break a leg to me, and unfortunately that night I did, which required a lot of new choreography and such. I ended up playing Sky Masterson with a cane, which a lot of people thought gave a little class to the role, but that always makes me nervous, so I never ever say break a leg anymore. Sometimes I'll just give a thumbs up to the actor and such. But I'm glad you love dancing, Cade. Has dancing been a part of every show you've done there?
Yeah, most shows.
Okay, great. Now, with this rehearsal schedule being so intense and also performances out there, I have to ask, how do you survive the heat of southern Utah?
Well, it's really hard. You have to always stay hydrated, or else you'll pass out.
That's bad. Very dramatic,
Yeah.
but bad. And you mentioned that for Shrek, for example, you had a pretty heavy costume on. Describe that for us.
Well, there was foam around my head, giving me the ears and such, and I was wearing gloves, and it was not fun.
Well, I heard
It was really hot.
I imagine. I mean, I don't. As an audience member, I go out there thinking I'm dying, and I can only imagine what it's like for the actors. For Beauty and the Beast, you have the actor playing the Beast, which has a little bit of makeup and prosthetics and such. And I'm amazed there aren't more collapses out there. Frankly, I remember I did a show called Troilus and Cressida one time. Do you know that show?
Not at all.
Gotcha. If you did, I'd be very, very impressed. It's a Shakespeare show, and it's not one that's done very often. But they had a younger actor who was playing a role called Pandarus. And the actor needed to be a little older, so they ended up putting a bald wig on him that they could put some gray on the edges. And, it does get hot up in Cedar City. Certainly not the kind of heat that's down at Tuacahn, but it does get hot. And one evening, I will never forget, after the performance, he went to take off the bald wig. And as he, it kind of separated the adhesive of the wig from his face, it was like two waterfalls just coming out of the bald wig. Now, I heard rumors that there were times you'd even have to take off your gloves and dump the water out.
Sometimes, yeah, it was.
Yeah, his fingers would be all pruny. Be all wrinkled up.
The trials
Yeah.
of being an actor, ladies and gentlemen. Well, and so how do you rehearse with that? I mean, you mentioned that there is a lot of dancing, which of course is physical.
Yeah.
I don't want to be out there in the noonday sun dancing. How do you handle that?
Well, we do take water breaks where you can go and just get water, and that really helps because it's really hot.
And I don't know if people are watching on Facebook Live right now. And by the way, you can be watching this by going to Radio St. George. That's RADIO space ST, no period, GEORGE. So check that out on Facebook. But one of the things you may notice is there is a little bit of a reddish tint to Cade's persona right now. Is that from being outside?
Yes.
Gotcha. I would imagine.
They just moved rehearsals outside this past week, so
Oh, my word.
they've been spending their days outside. They've been in and out on the rehearsal pad before this week, but they've been out on the stage for the entire rehearsal. So lots of hats and sunscreen and those neck chillo things.
A stage full of Panama Jacks,
Right.
if you will. That's right. And Kate, I don't know if you know who Panama Jack is or not.
Nope.
I have become old, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Karen, let me ask you. You have all these actors who are on the Tuacahn stage. I'm assuming quite a few of them have never been on a Tuacahn stage before.
Yeah,
Is
a
that-
lot of them are new. I mean, we do have a couple that have been here before, but most of them are new. And it's a whole different animal to work outside like that than it is to work on an indoor stage. I mean, besides just the heat, I mean, there's the wind and the dirt and allergies, and we have animals, so there's
Right.
that too.
That's
and
right.
the stage is big. It's bigger than they're used to, so there's a lot of space to cover and a lot more motion. than maybe you'd need in a smaller space.
When you think about these small, intimate moments, particularly in musicals, and the directors, I think, have to be very savvy about staging these scenes. If you put them too close together for too long a time, of course, the audience that goes back for 3 miles, yes, I'm being a little hyperbolic there,
Right.
but, all they see are these two people really close to each other. But then on that stage, you do have to stage it so that you have the intimacy, but you also have the space.
Yeah. Our team of directors and choreographers this season is amazing, and the shows are beautiful. Our crew just did their first set changeover last night from Matilda to Cinderella, because Cinderella started rehearsing today. They split the week, and that I mean, I took them like energy drinks and things at like 11:30 last night, and then breakfast this morning at 8. So they were still there all night to figure that out.
Like the good company manager you are.
Those massive set pieces, and those people are working so hard. Thankfully, most of it's under the cover of darkness, so they get a little shade.
And that's what I understand, that Tuacahn shows actually start later than the standard 7:30 start time. What time do they start?
When we first open the shows at the beginning of the summer, they don't start till 8:45. We have to wait until it starts to get dark just for the lighting effects and all those things to have the impact that we want them to have. And there are no matinees. There's no shade, and we can't light it.
Right, I imagine that would be
Brutal.
particularly brutal.
It would be brutal, yeah.
I mean, we live in the land where NASA won't send rovers because the conditions are so harsh. It's okay, maybe it's not quite that bad out there.
As soon as the mountain shades the amphitheater, so like early evening, it feels a million degrees cooler. And even though it probably still is, appallingly hot, it doesn't feel like it anymore. You get that shade, and then there's such a beautiful space. It's just amazing, and there's this energy there being outside. It's just gorgeous.
I'll tell you this, I doubt this will happen. This is my plea to Scott Anderson, my plea to those powers that be at Tuacahn. It is a beautiful, beautiful space, and the work that's being done out there, I think, is particularly stunning. A lot of Disney work, family-friendly work and such, and they use the spectacle quite well. I'm going to ask, I know the answer is probably going to be no, a resounding no that resounds throughout the canyon. I would love to see some kind of an opera out there. It's just huge. It's grandiose. I don't know that would necessarily sell the way some of these other shows do, but...
They might throw that on the survey that they send out and try and get feedback. It's just something we'd have to be able to sell for the for the run of the season.
Right.
That's the only thing. But you never know.
Scott, Ryan Norton, if you are listening, and actually, like
There's
I said...
a vote for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got my vote. So anyways, we've talked about Tuacahn quite a bit, and there is some exciting stuff coming up at Tuacahn. I can't speak today, coming up at Tuacahn, and I do want to make sure that we go over some of those details before the end of the show. But there are also other performance venues in town, and Cade, I have seen your face other places. What else have you done?
I was in Beauty and the Beast International and National Broadway Tour, and that was super fun. I got to travel around different places. I was in Egypt, Romania, Dubai. Yeah.
Can you see the look of envy coming across the computer at you right now?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Places we would not have gone, probably, if it weren't with a show.
And that's right. You went overseas with this, the Broadway tours and such. How did you enjoy being in foreign countries?
It was cool. I mean, it was awesome.
I think that sums it up pretty well there.
That's pretty cool.
And I think how wonderful that, again, I keep going on your age. I hope you don't mind this, but 10 years old, you've got quite a lot of life experience behind you, which is tremendous. Now, what was it like being on tour? We've talked about how rigorous it is being here in Tuacahn, rehearsing all day and such. What are some of the challenges of being on a tour?
Well, definitely the bus, because sometimes you're in a theater one night and then you're traveling on the bus another, and it's pretty hard because there are quiet hours that you have to not talk until then.
Until noon, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you just have to be in your own little world.
There were only 2 kids on the tour, so the adults would be sleeping on the bus.
Yeah.
And kids would have to try to be really quiet.
It's like Christmas morning. You know that you can go out there to the tree soon.
They watch their watches very carefully. It's 12:01. I can speak.
Well, gotcha. So there was one other kid on the tour with you. Were you guys friends? Did you get along?
Oh, yeah, we got along great.
Fantastic. Good. And so being on the bus and traveling around and such, did you ever get tired of it?
Sometimes, but at the same time, it was really fun, like going different places and seeing stuff.
Gotcha. And were you with him, Karen?
Yeah, I was there the whole time.
Got it. And what were you doing on the tour? Were you just a chaperone or were you working?
No, for that tour, I was just a chaperone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I don't mean to imply that's not work. I've chaperoned kids before.
Yeah, no. And then, just trying to keep on top of his school. Mm-hmm. That's also another.
So I'm assuming, was it kind of a homeschooling situation or a tutoring situation during that?
Yeah, he was enrolled in an online virtual school from it was Utah Virtual Academy through here, and that's how he spent third grade, which was, it was great. It's just you can't really do it on the bus because you can't talk.
All that quiet
and he
time.
was 8. So you would just get to the next city and you'd go to the theater, and then the books traveled in a trunk with a set. So you'd have to go to the theater to get his books, and then you were just back into the homework.
I left my geography book in the castle. Shoot. I got to go get it. So let me ask you, how did you get into this? I mean, you've been on a tour, a company manager for Tuacahn. Where did you guys come from? How did this happen?
Theater, musical theater in particular, has just been part of our family from the very beginning. Kate's dad is an actor, and he really doesn't know any better. He grew up around it. We've been throwing him into shows. He's always kind of had a show family, and he finds that he misses it when he's not doing it.
Got it. That's right. I like how you put that he doesn't know any better.
He doesn't.
My gosh, we just act as we do because we don't have any moral compass or anything. I'm totally kidding on that. You look like a good kid, Kate.
He's the best.
Let's see. So Kate, you've grown up with it. Grown up to the jolly old age of 10 there, and you've got quite a career. I want to let you know, and I'm not just buttering up my guest here. I had the pleasure of watching Cade in Willy Wonka, the musical, and this was at St. George Musical Theater not too long ago, actually. And Cade, you were an absolute delight to watch out there. What I loved is quite often, and this isn't just child actors, quite often this is adult professional actors as well, you'll see them check out on stage. They'll be up there, they'll be saying their line. There's kind of the joke of, my line, then you talk, then you talk, then you talk. Now I will act some more and say my line, then you talk, then you talk. And you see that quite a bit. But Cade, you were always engaged up there, and I always had a good time watching what you were doing.
Thank you.
And that to me is the sign of a pretty good actor. Did you have fun doing that show?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Gotcha. You played a character named Mike TV.
Yeah. Which I think it kind of fits me pretty well.
And how's that, Kate?
Electronics, child.
He's pretty connected.
And I can't describe the look on his mother's face right now. I'm trying to read it as yes.
It's so true. When we were looking at houses, he just wanted to know how well the Wi-Fi worked.
That's very important. Very important.
Do you want to see which one's your room? No. How does the Wi-Fi work?
Right. And keep going, Kate. I'm sorry.
Just what's the password?
What's the password? How do I get onto this Wi-Fi? I have to admit, I'm one of these technologically challenged individuals that I never reset my password. It's still that incredibly long 30-digit thing on the inside of the box. Yeah, the look of horror on Cade's face.
How do you tell people?
How do they get on? How do they connect? So, Southern Utah, do you have ties here in Southern Utah? What brought you here? Was it Tuacahn?
It was. It was Tuacahn back in 2010 with the show Tarzan. The first time they did it was the first time I'd ever been to Tuacahn, and I fell in love with the people. The space, too, which is where I met most of the people. Cade was 2, turning 3. And
already had a career that we envy.
He was just, he's kind of grown up here, and the people are amazing. Everybody I've met, and I love going to work every day. I work with the nicest people.
Fantastic. That's well. Obviously, if you've been here since 2010, something's going right.
Off and on, but this is always where I'd want to come back to. This feels like home.
Gotcha. That's tremendous. And you mentioned, and I'm sorry to go all over the place here, but that's what I do. You mentioned the animals at Tuacahn, and I want to just give a little bit of a story, as I'm prone to do on this show. I saw Les Miserables. This was, 8, 9 years ago, quite a while ago. And I remember being kind of stunned when I saw a goose on a leash. And I just throw this out there. I don't know who the director was. I've always wanted to ask that. Where did the goose on the leash come? But that's actually just indicative of the variety of animals that are available at Tuacahn. I went out there it was to look at props or something like that. It was a little while ago. I can't remember exactly why. And I kept looking over at a corral, and there was a zebra. A zebra! And I thought, this is like Disney. I've gone to heaven right here. Why are they there, Karen?
Kimberly Davis is our animal wrangler. She's been there since I've known about the theater, and she's amazing. Just anything that the directors think of that they want to throw in the show, she provides. We had 3 camels in Aladdin. Well, you'll see them again in Prince of Egypt.
Again, camels who have had a better career than I have.
Then there is a zebra out there, and there are mini goats, and there are donkeys, there's cows, there's horses. There'll be carriage horses for Cinderella. There's riding lessons as part of the cast rehearsal process for, the ones that have to interact with the animals. It's just cool. And Cade really likes the animals.
Gotcha. Do you hang out with the animals when you're not on stage?
Sometimes. I mean, the zebras and the mini goats, they're pretty adorable.
He has his own little zoo at home, too.
Oh, really? Yeah. What do you have at home?
I have 3 dogs.
Which puts us in crazy territory right there, but it's true.
Yeah.
You're right on the edge of code.
Oh, no, it's past. I don't know about the code, but it's definitely past crazy.
Right.
3 dogs, 2 lizards, a bird, and 2 bunnies.
A bird. Okay, you do have quite a menagerie going on there. Now, your pets are not listening, I'm assuming. Do you have a favorite?
Ooh.
Think they'll feel it if you say it out loud?
I don't know.
They'll all think, he said me.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I love them all.
Yeah, Polly wants a shout out. Polly wants a shout out. You got a parrot. Does the parrot talk?
He will laugh and make bark noises because
does imitate the dogs a lot. If somebody knocks on the door, it sounds crazy.
That's wonderful, actually.
Yeah,
he's a baby. He's only about
a
year old, maybe.
Yeah. And also he'll make kissy noises. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cute.
Okay, gotcha.
He kisses and laughs mostly.
Hey, yo. Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. You got a bird with an attitude there. So anyways, where do you want to go, Cade? After this, you're living the high life. Where do you want to go?
I don't really know. I want to be a zoologist probably.
Fantastic. Looks like you're in the right place to start. Gotcha. So do you want to be a performing zoologist? Do you want to be a Dr. Doolittle? What's going on with this?
Yeah. I mean, probably both.
Gotcha. You're going to be the actor who goes around to every town, and you'll be I don't know, one of these actors or these doctors who takes care of all the animals in town wherever you go. That'll be, I think, a great skill set for you.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, there are a lot of people, we talk about the professional actors who come into Tuacahn, but you have a lot of community involved, don't you?
Yeah, we have about half and half professional actors versus the non-equity performers, and we pull from everywhere. We audition here locally. We audition in Salt Lake, in Provo, and Las Vegas, and then LA and New York. So we kind of pull from everywhere. And people will come from other places, too, to those cities to audition.
Well, and I think what a wonderful opportunity. I mentioned at the beginning of this show that this isn't about just showing where you can go observe, but where you can participate. And I think it's wonderful that we have a local theater that is local, but also works on a regional level, a professional level. And local people get to intermingle with professionals from other places. Now, this has always been not a pet peeve of mine, but something that I feel is very, very important. Quite often there's this distinction made between community theater and professional theater, and then you can add to that as well educational theater and then go even beyond with children's theater. This is me standing on my soapbox just a little bit. I would say all of those things are just nominal. There's one thing, and it's called theater when it comes down to it.
Theater.
And there's this stereotype out there, for example, that community theater, it's half theater. It's just people messing around. And professional theater, it is this high thing. And you've got educational theater, it's all exploratory and nobody wants to see it. And children's theater, it's just bunnies bouncing on the stage. All of these are incredible stereotypes to me. And I want to let it be known that I have seen some community theater that is out of this world. Just amazing. I've also seen some that's not so great. I've seen some professional theater that is out of this world, and I've seen some professional that's not so great. What it literally comes down to is, are people doing it as a profession, or are they doing it just as community members? And I think how wonderful that we have these theaters that allow people to work together, people who are doing it full-time as a profession. They're union actors or union technicians and such. And then you have local people who, some of them might just be trying it, or some of them might be dedicated to bringing the arts to the local venues and such, maybe some of even the smaller venues. I just think that's a tremendous, tremendous thing that we have in Tuacahn. Now, I do hope that everybody has taken advantage of Tuacahn. You mentioned, Karen, that there's not only the summer season, but there's also a Christmas show. When did that start, and what's going on with that?
Last year was the first year that we did a Christmas show, A Fairy Tale Christmas, with Michael McLean. And we workshopped it the year before, and then we did a fully staged version this last year, and we'll do it again. And it's really a neat experience. Hopefully we can make it kind of a tradition, so that people will go see that, like they see the Rockettes or they go see the Grinch or something, make it kind of a part of their family, just like they do the live nativity, which we do outdoors. It's just really neat.
Fantastic. I do hope people will take advantage of this. And just a quick story about the Rockettes. I have never been to Radio City Music Hall when the Rockettes were performing, but I'm happy to say I was in Seattle when the Rockettes came to do, I believe it was a Christmas show that they brought. And I'll tell you, it was the eeriest thing. The absolute eeriest thing. I was in Seattle Center. I was doing a show at Seattle Children's Theater, as a matter of fact, at the time. And I was just in the center heading to work. And all of a sudden, this group of young ladies walked by. There had to be 30 or 40 of them, exactly the same height. It was the weirdest thing. I know that sounds kind of odd, but I thought, I am in the Twilight Zone right now. And then I found out it was the Rockettes later on, and that made sense. That was a total digression from what we're talking about here. I definitely want to give you both huge thanks for being a part of this. We're actually heading up to time for this show. I'm always amazed with how fast the time goes, and one of the advantages for me of doing this show is I get to know people who I've heard their names and I've seen them perform and such, but I actually get to know fellow artists in the community. And I also get to learn. If you were able to listen to our last show, we had Shane Christensen, who is a ceramicist, and I never knew there was so much that goes into a kiln or a wood-burning kiln or the production of ceramics and pottery. And as well, I didn't know as much about pigeon racing as I did at the end. You never know where these conversations are going to go. Now, I mentioned that this is a very special edition of this show. Again, this will be our last broadcast until the fall. And again, just because I won't be here, but we've had such a tremendous, tremendous outpouring of support for this show, and our listenership has actually grown, and we've got people who want to be on here. I'm happy to say that we will be returning in the fall. Please keep an eye on Radio St. George. That's a Facebook page, or you can even find our page specifically on Facebook, On the Arts. And just go on, like our page, and you will get updates as they come through. We are thinking about perhaps even a different format next semester, if you will. I'm thinking academically, but in the fall. We've had such a tremendous amount of interest in people being on the show. We're thinking about going daily, 5 times a week. We may look at the time that we're actually going to be broadcasting, but keep your ear to the ground to find out what's going on. Special thanks not only to Karen Edwards and Cade, thank you for being here today, but also thanks to Sean Denovan, who is the station manager, director, and owner, who was very, very generous when I came up to him and half tongue-in-cheek said, "Hey, can I have a radio show?" And he basically said, "Yes, when do you want to be on?" And there we were. And I appreciate all of you who were so patient with me trying to figure out which buttons to push in especially those first few episodes. A special thanks to all of the folks who have been guests on this show. We've got Jan Broberg from the Center for the Performing Arts at Kayenta, Rachel Cox, a local singer and choral director, Paul Weens, the conductor of the St. George Chamber Singers, Mayor John Pike, Joel Thomas, a local actor and a playwright, Doctors Robbie Matheson and Glenn Webb, both composers and instrumentalists in town. Kathy Cecilwitz, the curator of the Sears Art Gallery. Gary Morris and Kent Hayes, Kent Harrison Hayes. Kent, if you're listening, I apologize. Two fantastic actors who are currently working in a production of Art at the Center for the Performing Arts at Kayenta. Melinda Funstein Vaughn from SUU as well as USF, and also one of the co-founders of the again, I mentioned I'm having trouble with English today. Co-founders of the Statera organization for women's presence in theater. Dan Folks and Adam Mast, two local filmmakers doing quite well. Josh Scott, a local high school theater teacher, and the three students he brought on to play with us, Brooke Meadows, Henry Wallace, and Taylor Tu. Chris Davies, the incredible aficionado of costumes. Chelsea Richards, an aficionado of scenic and stage design. Shane Christensen, a ceramicist, and I would be very, very remiss if I didn't give big thanks to my beautiful wife, Christina Harding, who has acted as the producer for this show. She is an incredible inspiration in all that I do, and thank you very much, sweetheart. So to everybody listening right now, thank you so much. Please do look for us in the fall, and remember to keep your ears and eyes on the arts.